The very first Father's Day was celebrated in 1910 in Spokane, Washington. And it was started by Sonora Dodd in honor of her father. And the reason was that when Sonora was a little girl, her mother passed. And so her father raised her with this amazing balanced energy of fathering and yet mothering her at the same time. And so she decided that fathers ought to have a special day, and she landed on the third Sunday in June, and Hallmark Cards is glad she did. So thank you, God. But it gives us an opportunity to practice the one of the 10 Commandments, doesn't it? To honor our Father. The inner aspect of us that is fathering us, always has, always will, and also our earthly fathers. And though we landed on the planet through different families, and there are all kinds of configurations of family, the truth is that you and I have been given one Father, one divine essence of love through which, from which, into which we were actually, literally born on the planet. Our souls chose to be here, and we celebrate our Father. That's why the Lord's Prayer has that powerful phrase. It doesn't say, my Father, as if we're differentiated and separate from one another, but the celebration is our Father. And the Father that's referred to in the Lord's Prayer is the Father that Jesus and master teachers speak of. In all different languages, in an Aramaic, in the original Aramaic, his word for father was Abba. Abba is also translated, I called my father Papa, Daddy. It is that flexible, wonderful aspect of the masculine that we each have to not only to carry, but to bring forth in our own lives and in others' lives that we're privileged to share our life force with. And you can feel that relationship in the words of a poet, and this is, I don't know the poet's name, but it is this Abba essence that we celebrate today is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. This fathering aspect of living life is the source of all our abundance, the source of all our good, the source actually of all things. And retrospectively, we can see that even in the difficult things, there was a fathering essence giving us the strength and courage, the galloping chutzpah, if you will, to get through that situation. It's a call for us then today to honor the real relationship that we have with the fathering presence that is within us and within our fathers, no matter how they showed up on the earth plane. The music that you picked today for Prelude was so beautiful. And I was picturing my father. He used to do the thing where I would give him one hand and one leg. Did you guys do this? And he would spin me and do the airplane thing, and I would just go, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then my father was a dancer. So from the time, and I'm his only girl, the littlest of of his children, from the time I was very little, he would put music on. And he would ask me to come and stand on his feet. And he'd hold my hands, and I'd gaze up at his face. He'd look down at me with his eyes in namaste. And he would dance with me, lifting my feet, giving me the sense of what it is to live life in a celebratory way. And he would continue to look into my eyes. Even if I looked away and averted my gaze, he would continue looking into my eyes until I felt him presencing me. The ministry of presence is a ministry that the strength, the fathering aspect of us can carry for ourselves and for others. As humans, we have this ideal of what it is to be a father. And we see fathers are supposed to be tall and strong, and they're supposed to never leave us. They're supposed to be here for us no matter what. And yet, in our earthly experiences, that earthly fathers can be weak. They can miss the mark. They can feel lost. They can experience life in a messy way with us. They too can be vulnerable, and they can seem to be temporal. Yet they are precious in their humanness, and we get to love them. As we awaken in consciousness, we get to love them no matter how they showed up. Because by doing that, we get to love ourselves no matter how we have showed up. They are just like us. There was a vulnerable moment in our history that I know you all remember. Do you remember where you were when the planes hit the towers in New York? Can you picture where you were? Do you remember the stunning silence that you felt in your heart? A silence of disbelief, of unknowing, of knowing, of feeling life fully right where you are and not knowing what to do. It was for a moment, it was as if we as individuals and as a collective, as a nation and as a world community could choose the golden rule. That we could actually choose from this moment of horrendous behavior, that we could from that moment choose to treat each other as we would have others treat us, that we could actually love our enemies, that we could actually pray for those who persecuted us, and many, many thousands, millions of human beings took that time to do just that. To hold a Christed space with each other, a Buddhic space with each other. Something happened that day, and it happened in you and it happened in me, and we will never be the same. We know that in that moment, 3,000 souls were lifted up, and something in us was lifted. That's what our fathers, at their finest, in their finest moment, wanted us to know. I don't ever want to minimize what happened. What we get to do is we get to maximize the life-affirming call that we are being given to wake up. And our fathering presence helps us in those moments to think clearly. It helps us take a broader view. It helps us face whatever's going on with as much integrity as we possibly can and know that we'll move through it. We will move through it. We have always moved through it. We will always move through it. In Romans 12:2, our opening statement came from this. Paul advises us, do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. There's a story that was shared with me that I just love. It's a story of a CEO of a huge corporation who decided it was going to be time to retire soon. And he wanted to know that he was leaving his corporation in good hands. And so he called in all the youngest executives in his corporation, those that had a long earthly future, could be with the company and carry it forward in amazing ways. And he told them that amongst them was the next CEO of the corporation. Now, these weren't people who had necessarily gone through all the, they'd gone through all the little permutations of corporate ladder movement that we think has to happen in hierarchical structure. And what he did was he said, I want to see you back in a month. I'm going to have another meeting with you in a month, and I want to give you something that I want you to care for. And he gave each of them some seeds to plant. He said, I want you to go home and I want you to get a pot and some soil, and I want you to plant these seeds. And in a month, I want you to come back to me with those plants so that we can all see what has happened under your care. So they all went back and they planted their seeds. There was this one young executive who was so excited. He planted the seeds and he got this fabulous soil. He used fertilizer and he was so excited. Every day he'd go to see this plant and see how it had progressed. How was it evolving? How was it growing under his care? But nothing happened. There was no shoot that came up. There were no leaves. There was nothing to show for the love and care he was giving, but it didn't deter him from giving that care. He was embarrassed. He thought, oh my gosh, I was given this to nurture, and nothing I'm doing is enough. 1 month went past, and he walked in with his pot. Just soil, nothing showing. And when he walked into the room, all these other young executives had their pots of various flowers and vegetables. And they were just growing, and they were beautiful, colorful, and plentiful. And he set his bare pot before him. The CEO walked in, and he said, wow, and he walked past everybody's plants, and he looked at what had happened as they had nurtured their seeds. And he came to the pot that was empty, looked into the eyes of the young executive, went to the front of the room and said, I present to you our next CEO of the corporation. And it was the young man with the empty pot. Everybody oohed and awed, just like, they were in shock. He said, well, you know fully well why this is so. The seeds that I gave each of you had already been baked. There was never going to be a plant that grew from them. You thought you weren't enough, and you had to go out and get something to replace it so you could have something to show for your work. But this young man stayed in integrity. This young man was not ashamed to show that he had put forth his best effort, as our fathers have done. And sometimes it looks like there's nothing to show. This is when the minister wipes her eyes. Sometimes there's nothing to show, and sometimes we don't show up as our fathers think we ought to show up. But that's what our fathers at core wanted to teach us. To encourage us to live life, live it boldly. The prophet Jeremiah, who is this dramatic guy, oh my gosh, a doom and gloom kind of guy, at core said, follow the presence of God in you. Do what's before you to do. You'll know the way. Don't make stuff up. Be the light that you are. In Jeremiah 29, 11 and 13, it says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord of your being. I know the plans I have for you. Plans to give you hope and a future. You will seek me and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart. Mark Nepo was we had fabulous speakers at the convention. Mark Nepo was there. Gary Zukoff was there. I got to sit at his table last night at the banquet, or Friday night at the banquet. Donna Eden was there teaching energy medicine and practicing with us. And Mark Nepo said this, life is just difficult enough that we need each other. So I want to share a self-story with you. Many of you ask about this medallion, and I don't know how far I've gotten into the explanation of it, but I will tell you, my father made it in his 80s. The reason he made this, and he had done silversmithing just for fun. He was a hospital administrator. But the reason he made it is that he was on his third cruise past Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And from his vantage point, he saw the Cristos on top of the mountain that had been built by the Brazilian people, who are at once Catholic in their heritage and they are spiritists. They know that life doesn't end, life is eternal, and we can communicate freely with all forms of life. And he heard a story about people wanting, before they put the Cristos there, that they wanted to have Jesus on the mountain. There are some who are going to put a cross there and have Jesus hanging on the cross. And an uprise came up from the consciousness of the people that said, no way. What will go there is a figure of a living Christ a living presence for all people, drawing all people. Not just Christians, quote unquote, but all people to life, all people to love. And that this Christos will stand with arms akimbo. Now, my father had only ever done silversmithing, so he knew, he's going to make this for me, because I am his only daughter on this earth plane. So he did the silver part, he did the mountain, and he did the hill, the mountain, and the mountains in the background. But he thought, I need to do the Christ in a special way, and I need to do something to make it stand out. And what shall I do? And he thought, I'll do it in gold. But he'd never worked with gold before, and he wondered, where am I going to get the gold? And then he remembered that he still had the fillings from his teeth. And he melted down the fillings from his teeth, along with a ring that he no longer wore, and he fashioned the Christ. My father really put himself into it. That's why when he left, I sang It Had to Be You. Do you remember that song? It had to be you. It had to be you. I wandered around and finally found somebody who could make me be blue, could make me be true, and even be glad just to be sad, thinking of you. Some others I've seen might never be mean, might never be cross or try to be boss, but they wouldn't do, for nobody else gave me a thrill. With all your faults, I love you still, 'cause it had to be you, wonderful you, it had to be you. Little call and response. God is my help in every need. God does my every hunger feed. God walks beside me. Guides my way through every moment of the day. Thank you, God. Today is an opportunity for us to respond to our own lives, to the Father of us, to our fathers, our grandfathers, the legacy upon which we stand in shockingly loving ways. With unimaginable forgiveness. Rumi says, let yourself be silently drawn by the stronger pull of what you really love. Because the Father in us is calling us to act big in small places. Isaiah 54 says this. It's a powerful picture. Enlarge the place of your tent. Let the curtains of your habitation be stretched out. Spare not. Lengthen your cords and strengthen your stakes. For soon you will be bursting out at the seams. May you today make room for your Father. And if you are feeling any bitterness, any resentment, it is simply because you're continuing to hold it. So I want to just show you something. I want you to take your hands. I want you to rub them together. I want you to smash them together. And I want you to rub it. I want you to get that energy up in your hands. Just get it up, get it up, get it up, get it up. And anything you've been holding about your father or about yourself as a father, just shake it out now. Shake it out. Both hands. Let it go. Let it go. If you need to do it again, do it again. Just energy, energy, energy. Just shake it out. Shake it out. Shake it out. Today is a day when we will trust for more. And I say to you, allow the mindset of your heart to inform you. For where you thought there was no way, there is a way. And your Father is here. Abba is here. So you'll remember, this is the day. Thank you, God.